Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going deep on some interesting English words and phrases.
Okay.
We've got paragon,
Okay.
crack up, doppelganger, and a
Right.
dime a dozen. And I think even for native English speakers, there's a lot more to these words than meets the eye.
Yeah, definitely. I think what's really interesting is that these are all words we use, pretty frequently, but they each have a lot to say about, cultural attitudes and historical shifts, even the psychology behind language.
Okay, well, let's start with paragon. It's a word that people use to sound impressive, but
Yeah.
what's the actual meaning?
So a paragon really refers to like an example of excellence.
Mm-hmm.
So a model or an ideal.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just about being good at something. It's about embodying a particular quality to the highest degree.
So, it's not enough to be a talented musician. You'd have to, set a whole new standard to be a paragon of musical talent.
Exactly. Yeah, you could think of it like historical figures like Marie Curie.
Mm.
She was a paragon of scientific dedication. Or Martin Luther King Jr., a paragon of peaceful activism.
Mm.
These people's achievements weren't just impressive. They actually redefined what was possible.
That makes me wonder, has the idea of a paragon changed over time? Like, what people considered a paragon in the past might be different from what we think of as a paragon today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cultural values and what society expects changes a lot. So something that might have been the ultimate ideal a long time ago might not be as important now.
Mm.
And just that difference is really interesting to think about.
And the word paragon itself, that has an interesting history too, right?
It does. It comes from the old Italian word paragon, which actually means like a touchstone that was used to test how pure gold was.
So it's like how a paragon represents the purest or most refined example, kind of like testing gold against a touchstone.
Okay.
I love those hidden connections in language.
Yeah, me too. It's so cool how words still have these echoes of where they came from, and they reveal a lot more about what they mean.
And of course, we have all these synonyms for paragon, like exemplar or quintessence or ideal. They all give you that sense of excellence, but
Right.
each one has its own little twist.
Yeah, absolutely. And choosing the right synonym can really change how your ideas come across.
Well, let's move from excellence to laughter.
Okay.
Let's talk about crack up. It's such a visceral word. It's like you can almost feel the laughter like bursting out when you hear it.
It really does capture that sudden, uncontrollable laughter. And I think the imagery of something breaking under pressure really sits well with that feeling.
Totally. It's like you're holding in all this laughter and then it just bursts out.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that crack up didn't always mean laughter.
That's true. It actually started in North America in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
And back then it could refer to both laughter and also like achieving success.
So someone could crack up a business deal. That's a
Yeah.
big change in meaning. Why do you think it ended up being mostly about laughter?
Maybe it has something to do with American culture and how we see humor. Maybe it shows how open and expressive we are as a culture. I mean, different cultures have different ways of showing their emotions.
It makes you wonder if other languages have expressions like crack up that are unique to their cultures and maybe give us a peek into how they think about humor and social interaction.
Yeah, that's a great question. Language really is a window into different cultures. And when you start to see those differences, it's really amazing.
Okay, now let's talk about something a little spookier. Doppelgänger, like your spooky twin.
Pretty much. A doppelganger is someone who looks exactly like you, but isn't related to you biologically.
Hmm.
And even the word doppelganger sounds kind of mysterious. It comes from German, and it combines the words doppel, which means double, and Gänger, which means walker. So it literally means double walker.
It's funny how the German language has all these eerie words that make you think of otherworldly things. Maybe it's because they have such rich folklore and mythology.
That's a great observation.
Mm.
Yeah, the idea of a doppelganger is a big part of German folklore. They're often seen as a bad omen, like they bring bad luck, or they could even represent your darker self.
Oh, wow. No wonder doppelgangers are used so much in horror movies and suspense novels. They really give you that feeling of unease and like something bad is about to happen.
And it's not just the meaning of the word, but the way it sounds, too. The way you say the G sound and the emphasis on the first syllable make it sound heavier and more serious than other words for double.
So it's not just another word for twin or look-alike. It's like it has this much deeper meaning that connects to our culture and our psychology.
You got it. It taps into our deepest fears and our fascination with things we don't understand.
Yeah.
Like the idea that there might be another you out there somewhere, a shadow self with its own plans and desires.
Speaking of doppelgangers, I had this really weird experience a few years ago. I
Uh,
was traveling in Europe, and I swear I saw someone who looked exactly like me. It wasn't just a resemblance, it was like looking in a mirror. But before I could even say anything, they were gone.
that's crazy. Sounds like something straight out of a Hitchcock movie. Did it freak you out, or were you more intrigued by it?
Honestly, it was a bit of both. It made me question reality for a second. Like, what are the chances of running into your doppelganger in another country?
It really makes you think. Maybe it's a reminder that there are still things in the world that we can't explain.
All right, well, let's move on to something a little more down to earth. Let's talk about a dime a dozen. It's such a common saying, but I've never really thought about where it came from.
It's a great example of how language reflects our economic and social realities. The phrase comes from the early 1900s in the US when dimes were actually worth more. Things that were plentiful and cheap were a dime a dozen. It showed how abundant and cheap these things were.
So basically, it's saying something's as common and cheap as a dime, practically worthless. It's funny how we still use it even though dimes aren't worth as much today.
That's because it's so good at getting across that feeling of abundance and how little something's worth. It's like a shortcut in language that immediately creates a picture in your mind and a feeling.
Like a linguistic fossil, a piece of a past era. It makes you think about how many other sayings we use every day have these hidden historical connections.
That's what makes studying language so exciting. You're like peeling back layers of history and culture and seeing all these fascinating connections between words and what they mean in the world around us.
Yeah, it really shows how much history is hiding in plain sight right there in our everyday phrases. And speaking of phrases that mean something is common, are there other expressions like a dime a dozen that get across that same idea?
Yeah, there are a bunch. Like a dime a dozen is probably the most well-known in American English. But you also have things like two a penny or as common as muck, which are more common in other English-speaking countries. They all
Yeah.
mean pretty much the same thing. Something is so common that it basically has no value.
It's cool how these regional differences make the English language so rich, like a tapestry with all these different threads of culture and history woven in. So, is a dime a dozen really just American then?
Yeah, it is. It comes from the history of American money, and it shows how Americans think about value and scarcity. But even though it started in America, it's become pretty popular and understood in a lot of places where people speak English.
It makes you realize that language is always changing, borrowing things from different places and adapting to new situations. It's almost like a living thing, right?
I like that analogy. Language is always being molded and reshaped by the people who use it. New words pop up, old words get new meanings, and expressions travel across cultures and continents.
It's like we're all adding our own little threads to this huge, ever-changing tapestry of language.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why language is so interesting to study. It reflects who we are, how we think, and how we relate to each other.
Going back to paragon for a sec, you mentioned how the idea of a paragon might change over time. I'm curious to explore that a bit more. Like, what qualities would have made someone a paragon in ancient Greece?
That's a really interesting question. I think in ancient Greece, a paragon would have been someone who had qualities like courage, strength, wisdom, and eloquence.
Huh.
Like think of Achilles, he was known for his bravery in battle, or Socrates, he's famous for his philosophical ideas.
So physical strength and intelligence were super important back then. It makes sense when you consider how much warfare and philosophical debates went on in ancient Greece.
For sure. And their stories and legends became examples for people who wanted to be like them, shaping their values and goals.
Okay, so let's jump ahead to the Renaissance period. What would have made someone a paragon then?
During the Renaissance, the ideal kind of shifted towards a more well-rounded person, someone who's good at a lot of different things. Like think of Leonardo da Vinci. He was amazing at art, science, and engineering. He was the perfect example of the Renaissance universal man, someone who excelled in many areas.
So the idea of a paragon became more complex, kind of mirroring the explosion of intellectual and artistic activity during the Renaissance.
Exactly. The Renaissance was all about celebrating human potential and the pursuit of knowledge in all its forms. A paragon wasn't just a warrior or a philosopher anymore, but a polymath, a master of many different things.
And what about today? What qualities would make someone a paragon in the 21st century?
That's a good question. I think today we might look for paragons who show compassion, empathy, and a commitment to social justice. People who use their talents and influence to make the world a better place.
So it's like the focus has shifted from individual achievement to a more collective sense of responsibility.
Yeah, maybe that reflects our growing awareness of global issues and the need for everyone to work together.
It's amazing how the idea of a paragon has changed so much over time to match the values and priorities of different eras.
It really shows how adaptable language is and how it can adjust to new social and cultural situations.
This conversation about paragons has made me think about role models and how they impact us. Do you have any personal role models who have inspired you?
That's a great question. I've always admired people who are curious